What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the CK Podcast. I'm your host, Leo Bias. Today we have the guest of the year, Emmett Ryan from Balling Europe. My man came on last year to talk about Bogdanovich. This year he's coming on to talk about Luka Doncic and a little bit about Bogdanovich. He knows Luka inside out. He parties with him. He does everything with him. Well, maybe not that far, but how you doing, brother?
Good to be on the air, man. I wish I partied with Luka Doncic. I heard they had a good night after they won the Euroleague a couple of nights ago. I had to stay up all night before my flight home, so it was a little bit less partying for me after the game.
I hear you, brother, man. I hear you. It was funny because this entire show will be dedicated to your experience with him. I want to hear about your entire EuroLeague experience. We're going to touch on the whole ugly stigma of, oh, he's European and white. He's not athletic. You know, that whole stigma. We'll talk about all that. But first of all, man, just go ahead and just tell me your experience about the European Final Four because I am ecstatic to hear about it.
It was crazy. So it was Belgrade this year, which is a great city for European basketball. Unfortunately, one of the hardest cities in Europe to get to as major cities go. So my route was even crazier because my day job had me in Texas for a few days beforehand. I live in Ireland. I had to fly to Austin, do a few days in Austin, then fly from Austin, Houston, Frankfurt, Belgrade, and then it was straight into it. Yeah, so ran into Luka the night before the game started on the Thursday. There was this sort of practice before the game, basically with the players, and normally that's like crazy. Like every player, it's huge crowds fighting to get to him. This year, with one exception, who you were all guessing, it was pretty tame. I could get to any player I wanted, get all the time I wanted. Luka Doncic, that was warfare, man. Because of course he speaks three languages: English, Spanish, and Slovene, and so he had journalists ask him questions in all three languages. And we're all crowding around and punching around, and he's just sitting there on a chair, being very polite, taking all of us for all our time that he could give. And then we got to the action on Friday, and it was a kind of a weird setup. So the way it's neutral site venue, Belgium, teams from Turkey, Lithuania, Russia, and Luke was playing at Real Madrid from Spain. And the teams that brought the real large fan numbers, they were up first: Fenerbahce from Turkey and Zalgiris from Lithuania. So it was full barn, really loud for that game. Then afterwards, it's Real and Sheska, who seriously combined, they had 10% of the fans in this arena because they don't travel as well. And yeah, despite that, it was still pretty full because nobody went home, whereas normally they do. And the main reason, to be honest, was most of them wanted to see Luka playing in this game. He had a very good first game. It was kind of weird. He won MVP over the weekend, but it really was body of work because if you went at both the semi-final and the final, you wouldn't have said he was the out-and-out best player for his team in those games. But if you combine the final and the semi-final, he was clearly the out-and-out best player for his team. So it wasn't one guy came in, took over the weekend. It was more, he was the number two guy on the night in both nights, basically, for his team. But the number one guy, was Sergio Yui the first night, Fabian Cozer the second. We're nowhere close to him on the alternating game, so to speak. So he was sort of, by body of work, the MVP, which I suppose is the right way to do it.
So how has Luka conquered all of Europe, man?
Well, it was a tough road back, because when I spoke to you last year, I think it was just after Eurobasket. Bogdan had obviously had a good tournament, and he was on his way to Sacramento. And Luka had obviously just won Eurobasket and had a great tournament. But the previous May, this tournament, the Final Four, he had an absolute stinker. I think he was 0 for 9 over 2 games from the field, no points. I think he had 1 rebound across 2 games, and he stank. There's no ifs, buts, maybes. He had an awful tournament in this last year. So he came into this with a lot of pressure on him, and obviously he's the most discussed European prospect ever. There can be plenty of arguments, over whether he's the best prospect ever, but no one would debate that he is easily the most discussed Euro prospect ever. And so all eyes were on him. You had guys from all over the US. James Jones from the Suns was there, and obviously they got the first pick. I don't actually think Vlade was in town, oddly. I didn't see him, but, because you figured, because, back in Belgrade, but, there was a lot of other NBA guys there, and, all eyes were basically on him, and, he stood tall because he had a couple of rough patches in both games, and he managed to come out of those rough patches and still be the force when it mattered for his side. The one common thread amongst all the things, it is the most boring stat, but about Luka Doncic this season has the dude draws fouls like nobody's business. On a per 40 basis, he leads the EuroLeague by, I think it's 2 fouls per game, 2 fouls per 40. He was just ridiculous, in that respect. And he did it again against Fenerbahce. He got Real Madrid's first 6 points. Was good through the end of the first quarter, then just kind of disappeared for the next 12, 13 minutes of action. And when he came back in, he just started doing what he does. He was like making other guys make mistakes and, using that to his advantage, So, and then, of course, in the final quarter, he did eventually foul out, but he was getting shots, he was getting in the right position, and he just got the job done. He plays like a much older man. I don't just mean, that he's so good. I mean, it's actually the style. He doesn't play like a guy who's 19, like he's only a third-year pro, which is what he is. He plays like a fella who's been around the league an awfully long time. And one of the big helps for that, although it was in some respects a hindrance for a lot of the season, was that he had to be the leader for his side this year, because Sergio Yui, who obviously a lot of guys on your side have heard of because he's been linked to the Rockets so many times, never eventually came over. He went down last summer. He was injured, ACL, and he was out until the mid-April when we had our playoffs here. And even then it was the second half of the playoffs, the one series. He only was back for the second half of that series. And so Luka basically took on the role he had as being the guy who ran the game for Real Madrid, whereas before he was sort of, splitting duty as the second guy of a two-man rotation, essentially. And, he just took it over. And you have all these vets like, Guseo, and obviously NBA vet, and,
Mexican
Anthony Randolph as well.
Boy.
Yeah, you're like a lot of guys there who have serious years on the clock, series veteran talent, and they just said, yeah, we're just gonna trust him, because we have to, and he showed he had earned it. So really good season. He was MVP of the league. Now I had him sort of second or third in my MVP votes, but still, the fact that he's even a top 3 pick for me, and he was MVP overall for the league, really says a lot about the performance, because you got some serious players over here. Obviously, I'm not claiming we're the NBA. No one ever does, but getting MVP in Euroleague is nothing to sniff at either. And he just, an incredible season for him. MVP, got the Rising Star award for the second year in a row, which is the best under 22 player, and a unanimous actual decision in the Rising Star, which wasn't exactly a shock, as in we all called that before the season started, that he'd win unanimously. And then, he was obviously as well, MVP and MVP of the actual finals. So tremendous year for him. It's no getting around that. I think even today, just a couple hours before you got on to me, he was listed in the Spanish leagues, starting 5 for the season, their best 5, and the MVP vote yet to come, where once again he's favored.
So before we continue the show, there are people from Serbia on it right now. They're saying hello. Tell people what time it is right now. Well,
I'm in Ireland, so I'm an hour better off than the Serbians in one respect in terms of talking to you. It's just kind of about 6:15. It's going 6:15 shortly. And the time zone situation was kind of curious to follow in the games, because obviously guys like yourself who are West Coast, 9-hour gap from Serbia. So, the game was at 8 p.m. The final was 8 p.m., Serbian time when I was there. And so for you guys, that's 11 in the morning. So, it's for me, it's I'm so much jealous of you guys for watching games, because if you're full-time in basketball coverage, basically the European action is sort of your breakfast or your mid-morning sort of, warm-up. So I would definitely, wouldn't mind doing that every now and again, for a couple of weeks of the season, being able to watch Euroleague when I'm having my mid-morning coffee. It would not be a bad thing. But yeah, but it was extraordinary. And he was against a really hostile Fenerbahce crowd in that final, because the Turkish fans, they travel, they came all the way from Istanbul, and it was a pretty much blue and yellow sort of stand. It's there's a couple of Lithuanian fans still there who were still cheering on their guys, but he was in a hostile environment and came out standing tall.
I agree 100% with that. But with that said, both the semifinal and the final, to me, he didn't play his best brand of basketball, but he played good enough to help Real Madrid win. What do you think was his biggest weakness in those 2 games?
That's a good one, because you're right. He wasn't at his best. I suppose the big thing for him in that game, that's a good. I wouldn't say shot selection, which is normally the easy one to go to. I think he picked his shots well, even though his percentages might have been amazing. I think in many respects it was sort of, fit at times was oddly the question, which normally isn't the one with him. But I think Real moved the roster around so much. All 12 guys played at least 9 minutes in the final, and the smallest actually for minutes was Facundo Campazzo at 9 minutes. And I think adjusting to the changing lineups took a little longer for Luka than usual this weekend, where normally he's very comfortable with that deep mad rotation. I think managing that with the pressure was an issue. And definitely he was getting drawn, because normally he doesn't give up many fouls, and he was getting drawn in a little too easily in this one. He was giving up in the final in particular. He was making a couple of dumb mistakes. The most obvious one was his 5th foul. It was against Brad Wanamaker, who Philly guy, obviously had a great career in Europe. And I think, you know, he was like just too quick to blame himself, which is a common thing with him at the bigger games. But again, it's one of those things which you've seen reducing as well. You know, where he he went for an outlet pass to a guy and intercepted by Brad Wanamaker. So Luka was to chase down, and like his arm went in so wild, like it would have been like me chasing down Brad Wanamaker. There was no way he was getting to that ball. You know, and it was one of those fouls where there's not even a debate. Like now they did recheck it on the monitor because it was a fifth foul. I'm guessing, no other reason. I mean, it couldn't have been more obvious. Like his arm basically hit like the upper arm of Brad, like just above the elbow. I mean, it's like, yeah, that's nowhere near the ball, you know, and it was like right over the top of him as well. Like it was an indefensible one. So that, I suppose, like, you know, but again, that was like 40 seconds from the end of the game, and he was like trying to do everything he could to help his team win. So I suppose it was. Yeah, like, you know, that was the one thing. I suppose the big thing with him is like sort of, you know, when he gets in a groove, it's something else. Like, I suppose that's one thing you're going to have to watch from the NBA is that like his overall shooting stats are quite good, but he's going to have nights where they look horrendous. Like, you know, like because it's a balance out thing. Like most of the time it'll be sort of the reliable what you expect in line with his stats. But when he is an off night shooting, oh God, that's a terrible one. But what he typically does in those nights, now it'll be hard as a rookie. I know that. A lot of your guys are going to say rookies don't get to the line. Over his career, he's got to draw so many fouls. It's ridiculous. Like, he's just a genius at it. It's like we're talking to a guy who does that like a 36-year-old at 19, you know, and like old men know to draw fouls. He draws fouls like he's an old guy.
Right, and that's why I believe he is the best prospect in the 2018 NBA draft class. I get in a lot of arguments with a lot of Kings fans who are very interested in this draft. You know, you have Marvin Bagley, DeAndre Ayton and Jaren Jackson among the best prospects in this class. But to me, Luka Doncic is clear-cut number one, and if I'm the Suns, I take him. But selfishly, I hope they take Ayton. That way he falls to the Kings. But realistically speaking, if the Suns are smart, they will take Luka, because in today's NBA, you need a guy who can draw fouls, who can play in the pick and roll, who is a pick and roll savant, who makes everyone around him better. And that's what I see Luka being. Now, the biggest question marks is defense, right? But I'm like, does James Harden play defense? Does Steph Curry play defense? They don't. It's an offensive-oriented league. And with that said, though, at 6'9", I believe he has very quick hands, and he can become a quick defender. Just thoughts on that?
Well, it's the D. If you'd asked me a year ago, they said, yeah, the defense needs a lot of work. But like, frankly, over the last year, we've seen the defense get an awful lot of work in. Like, it's like, you know, he's a different player defensively to a year ago, and a lot of that comes down to decision making. And he knows it's not just about like getting in the guy's face and making a stop. Sometimes it's about just reducing that space. And you know, well, height, he's listed at 6'8", like nose to nose, and I reckon he's 6'6", to be honest. You know, it's like I haven't seen the guy up close, but like it's 6'6" in real life is NBA 6'8", and you know, it's like his defense, it's just gotten smarter, to be frank about it. Like, because you know, it's not that he's getting more physical on defense. He is an aggressive player, but it's frankly, he knows when to commit. He's got his spacing down, and he's just getting better at it. So, and again, for like, you know, if you're worried about a 19-year-old backcourt guy's defense this early, you know, it's like it's the level it's at. He's above a 19-year-old, basically. You know, apart from a defensive specialist, obviously, but like, you know, he's well above what you'd expect from a 19-year-old. You know, attack first guard, like well above that level. And I suppose you mentioned as well Bagley, like, and I saw someone tweet this, like, sadly can't credit them because I've forgotten who it was, but you know, assume Ayton goes first, and you're thinking of passing on Doncic. Your next best option is a Duke big man. Really? You know, it's like, given the history of Duke big men, you know, I like Bagley, don't get me wrong, but like, you know, there is that sort of, you know, whatever you think about the whole Euros coming over, being question marks, like, you know, percentage-wise, Euros have a lot better survival rate in the NBA than big men from Duke, you know, so it's like, you know, if your call is like over, you're sketching this over because he's from Europe, I think you're sketching this over somebody being a Duke big man. It should be a bigger deal than that. Like, I suppose but it does remind me of one thing, which I'm guessing you're going to get to, but the first game in particular, I think, really showed, you know, with the questions about the physicality in Europe, which everybody always asks about, and actually the final as well, because like those are two bruising games, man. Like, you know, especially the final with Fenerbahce. Actually, now that I think about it, like Fenerbahce brought some heavy hitting, and like if anyone's arguing the European game isn't physical enough, like you ain't watching enough ball over here, basically, because our guys know how to hit each other. You know, it's like sometimes it look like rugby out there more than basketball. So yeah, it was good, and it's also good to see he's building up that bulk. Like it's going to help him long term with the athleticism questions around him because like he is definitely more athletic than he was a year ago, and also I think 1 year doing weights NBA style is going to make a massive difference there because you look at him with Kristaps, his body when he came over, Porzingis was a gangly bean, and now the guy's pretty cut, So I think like sort of the style you guys take to training and development, like for us being that sort of build can actually go against you sometimes in Europe. So like keeping that little bit leaner, like less muscle does make some sense in our style. But like 1 year of working out like an NBA player, I think that athleticism question is going to go away.
Right. So some people on the text line are saying he's Joe Ingles with more offensive tools, the dribbling and the passing, as well as the court vision. Well, I'm like, well, that's a damn good thing if that's the case. And then you have people asking if you believe that Fox, Bogdanovich, and Doncic will coexist and like to have the ball, but I know Bogey and Doncic are also good off the ball.
Yeah, like I think Bogey and Doncic are very good off the ball. I think the way D Fox is talking, because he's always been hinting. Well, I don't think Luka Doncic goes #1, which is kind of hinting that D Fox is looking forward to seeing Luka Doncic in Sacto. It's like I think they're going to be fine. And also, like this thing, Doncic is very comfortable not with the ball. Like we've seen him mostly as a point guard this year, but like even when we had our first chat last year, dude, I was saying he can play 1 to 3 quite comfortably. At NBA level. Now he hasn't played much 3 this year, which is the only thing he needed a crap ton of work at, to be honest, about getting used to playing the 3 again. But if he has to, or even as part of a 3 guard setup, when he's very used to playing in 3 guard setups over here, because they're, like the way they've become on vogue in the US, they've become really on vogue in Europe, being able to get those sort of setup out there. So yeah, him, Bogey, and D would work fine together in a lineup. I don't see that really being a concern. And again, Bogey is really, really fine being, off the ball and just, doing his thing, because he had to do a lot of that in Fenerbahce. Like sometimes be the ball handler, but more often than not, he didn't have the ball in his hands until very late in possession that he was being used on. So, and you saw how useful he was finding that in Sacto last season. Obviously, he had a great season for you guys. And I think Luka's going to be very similar, to be honest, because, again, he's used to having played alongside some real ball-heavy handlers in Sergio Rodriguez and Sergio Yui. And, while, he was the main dude with the ball for Real Madrid, he's very, very comfortable off the ball as well.
Yeah, I continue to tell people that in today's NBA, you need multiple ball handlers in a starting 5. And if you have a Luka Doncic and a Bogdanovich alongside a De'Aaron Fox, who, let's be honest, is not the best passers yet, because he came into league at 19. His mentality and his skill set is a scoring guard. Having 2 guys who can play make for him as well and put him in better situations will only help De'Aaron Fox. I keep telling people that, but I feel like people think, oh, Luka Doncic is just a point guard. He's going to come and take. No, he's not going to take over Fox's position. They're going to work as a cohesive unit, and ultimately, hopefully in the near future, God, hopefully God that they make the playoffs, because I'm tired of being in the lottery. But this is the 1 year that I did want to be in the lottery, because I do believe Luka is a game-changing player.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're mentioning with the way De'Aaron is a shoot first point guard. We've seen with him, he loves when the point guard is shot happy, to be honest, if he's playing the 2, because it allows him to be a different kind of 2, So, and the same thing with Bogdanovich, to be honest, that's actually one thing that's very similar to their games, is they love having a shoot first point guard beside them, because it allows them to use the whole of their game a lot more. And, it's because I remember with Bogdan at Fenerbahce, he was often beside Bobby Dixon, who was the definition of undersized point guard, a absolute pure, simple, this guy's a score first guy. And for Bogey, that was perfect, because it meant, Bobby be the ball handler, be score first, but if he needed someone to play make, then he would defer to Bogdanovich. And I think we're going to see the same with Luka as well, in a similar situation where, he may not be the ball handler, but he could be the creator and was still able to do his thing off the ball. So, it's a very good situation for him, and obviously he's going to be going to a lot of guys who respect his game if he goes there, because of the huge Serbian presence, which is only down the road from Slovenia by you guys standards, in Sacramento. Obviously the one thing over here is will Sacto go with him, which I've actually heard, I kind of look at all the situations. There's nowhere he could go bad that's in the top 5. Any one of those 5 situations, I kind of go and he'll be fine. But are you guys expecting Sacto to go small, go at Luka, or do you think you're going to see your fellas go at a big fella and I have to book different plane tickets?
Right. No, right. So when I hear some national guys say that the Kings may not take him, some sources say that league executives are saying that's all bullshit, because that's all agent driven. the Kings are not going to show their hand right now. I know for a fact they're going to draft Luka Doncic at number 2. And if they don't, Vlade should be fired if he doesn't draft Luka at number 2, because this guy is the real deal. But going back to Luka, what do you think? And I say this, with the Boston Celtics, last year they had Jaylen Brown. They still draft Jason Tatum. And after drafting Jason Tatum, they go out and they get a Gordon Hayward. I'm in the same mindset. I believe that you should have plenty of wings because you can never have too many good wings. What do you think if the Kings go out and get a Mario Hezonja and use him off the bench, give him a clean slate? Who I actually like Mario Hezonja. I think he's been screwed over by the organization in Orlando. I think he's very skilled, very athletic, more athletic than Luka and Bogey. I think that type of a trio could really work in Sacramento.
Yeah, I think with Mario, you've hit it on the head. He needs to get somewhere where he can have a clean slate because it hasn't worked out for Orlando. I think that verdict is in, but a lot of it came down to how he was used. And, he was coming from a situation in Europe, which couldn't be any less like Lukas. So Barcelona, which is the rival club of Real Madrid, Lukas' club where Mario was, they have this horrible history going back like 5, 6, 7, 8 years even, where young guys don't get minutes. Like we're seeing it even today, like Samanic, who's a draft prospect, he's leaving the club. Like Rodions Kuric, who's a draft prospect, he's not got any minutes. All these guys who are like, people talk about being first round prospects, and Mario obviously was a lottery pick. And Mario, for his level, wasn't getting the minutes and didn't get the trust from his coach at the time. And that's because Barcelona's approach doesn't really seem to be a way to get young guys through. So he had come from not getting enough minutes in Barcelona to not getting enough, sort of chances in Orlando. He needs to go somewhere where they can kind of go, what is this guy? What can we use it for? And you show him, like, here's the role you're going to have now, and you can work your way into a better one. But if you do well at this role, we will go all in on you, And I think somewhere like Sacramento wouldn't be a bad spot at all for Mario because, like, the expectations in Sacramento for next season still aren't that high, much like they were in Orlando. But the difference is Sacramento, you guys are willing to take a chance on the fellas you bring in, whereas Orlando just seems to not know what it's doing.
Right, and selfishly, I would want him in Sacramento, but I think the best destination for him would be with Greg Popovich in San Antonio. I think Popovich would make him into that top 5 pick because he really has that beautiful skill set. People, and which this leads to the whole stigma of, Europeans are slow and unathletic. And I'm like, have you seen Hezonja play? Have you seen a bunch of these white guys who can jump? Like, I just hate that stigma. And that's the first thing that the recreational fan goes to, right? Oh, he's white, European, he's soft. Like, have you not watched the NBA? We got Jokic, we got Marcus Gasol, Defensive Player of the Year. We got what's his name? The guy from the Jazz. I'm slipping on his name right now. But
Rudy Gobert.
Rudy Gobert. I mean, these guys are all Europeans. I don't want to hear that Europeans are soft. Like I can say the same thing. There are some unathletic black guys, but to me, it's just ridiculous to say someone's unathletic because they're European or white. To me, they're unathletic because they were born without a gene of athleticism.
And the thing as well, I think the athletic thing really gets overdone with Luka because explosiveness matters, but so does timing. No one can really argue about Luka Doncic's timing moving. And like when he wants to go at a guy, for him, like when we've seen him against guys who would be unquestionably considered athletic, been able to just basically lull them and posterize them. Like, he's got this, like, when he cuts into the lane from either side, like, he can suddenly look like he's got an awful explosive burst. Like, and suddenly it's like, this guy's unathletic, right? Okay. So I always find that one a bit overblown. And again, it's like, is his game suited to the NBA? And I go, there's no team in the NBA right now where I wouldn't give him a couple of minutes. And that includes the Warriors. Like, I'm not saying he'd be a star in the Warriors, he'd be a starting player, but I'm saying is, I could see him contributing 6 good minutes for the Warriors right now, and they're going to win the championship. It's like, and that's like, at this stage, having not played a minute in the NBA. If we're talking about that for him right now, like, it's like obviously his level, his ceiling is really, really high. Again, it's like the typical success rate of Euros is better than the average. Like, you look at the Euros who've been drafted since 2007. Anyone who was a lottery pick, sorry, not a lottery pick because of one guy in particular. Anyone who's a top 10 pick is still in the league. Like the one exception, Sacramento know all about that. So it's like, but like that was a reach. That was a reach. I think it's safe to say. But yeah, it's like kind of look at this and you go, listen, like I'm not saying that necessarily be a superstar. I think he will be. What I'm saying is, I'd be extremely surprised if any Euro that gets through all the questioning, gets through all the doubts about him, who gets drafted in the top 5, is going to be a true bust, because they've got to go through this extra level of scrutiny that, like, your typical college player doesn't have.
I agree 100% with that. Now, I do want to talk about a little bit about Bogey. I know Bogey was there in Serbia. We were texting back and forth. I was like, bro, send me video. And then he was like, yeah, I'll send you video. And he never did, because I'm sure he was out there having a great time back home. But did you get to talk to him? And what did you think about his overall season in Sacramento?
I sadly didn't run into Bogey at all, even though he was very close to me on repeated occasions, but we never actually crossed paths. Bogey, obviously great. I'll be honest, it was a better season than I thought he'd have. If you knock a couple of points off his average, knock a couple of boards off his average, I'd still call that a good season. And he delivered. And he's shown he belongs in the NBA. But again, you could see as well, he was adapting to the game as the year went on, and it was kind of cool to see him sort of get together with a couple of old buddies of his while he was over in Europe. He was at Ekpe Uda, who of course was at the Jazz last season, having had a great season in Europe alongside Bogey. Pero Antic was in town because he now lives in Belgrade. Of course, played 2 seasons with the Hawks, 2 very different seasons in terms of performance. And he's hanging out with him as well, I know. But it was kind of cool to see him back hanging about and just having a bit of crack with a few of the lads over here, because it's kind of, when we see our guys who've gone off to the NBA, like the time zone thing, because right now it's 6:15. You think of the typical NBA tip-off time. If they're playing somewhere like Sacramento, it is impossible for me to watch that game if I'm going to go to my job the next morning. And that's the norm. So for us, it's like we're keeping up with them, but not as much as we'd like, because we're hoping to get weekend games, or we're hoping to get the MLK Day game or the Christmas Day game. Like, you're talking literal sort of certain like landmark days to be able to watch fellas who we've been able to watch normally here for years. And that's what Luka is very similar. Like, he's got the Spanish League playoffs left, and then if he goes to Sacramento or Phoenix, you got you're either 7 hours or 8 hours difference from me. From most of Europe, 8 hours or 9 hours difference. It's going to be a lot harder to watch him day in, day out, night in, night out, unless somehow somebody decides to hire me to do NBA coverage, which isn't happening in the next 3 months. And it's like, it becomes tougher, because even like someone like Giannis, who, obviously most of your reviewers and listeners would know, wasn't really on the radar that much in Europe, because he's playing Division II in Greece and then straight to the NBA. And so obviously now he's had a fantastic career so far in the NBA, but it's tough to watch Giannis Antetokounmpo games, because Milwaukee is that many hours away in terms of time zone from Dublin, from Athens. You've got to adjust your life to sort of, how do I keep following these guys? It does change. And so Luka, it's going to be interesting as well. And it does point as well, though, one big thing actually I'm thinking of there bringing up is he's already had one big move in his life in terms of actually where he lived. Like, going from Ljubljana to Madrid at I think it was 13 or 14, and he was able to adjust and get into it quickly. And that age as a kid, moving to a different city, new language, which it was for him, very new environment. Like, I think that's one of the things that stands to a lot of Euros come over. A lot of them have to move home quite young, and so they can adapt to an American city very quickly, because they've already moved, halfway across the continent for themselves, moving another continent over, and most of them come over with great English, and some of them go over with great English and then hide they've got great English when they get back. I'm not talking about Sergio Rodriguez at all there. Oh wait, it's like, and so he's gonna, wherever he lands, be it Sacramento, be it Phoenix, be it Atlanta, he's gonna adapt to that city pretty quickly, because he knows about making the sort of big moves in terms of life-changing stuff as a young man, which it's no small deal for NBA players. I think that's one of the reasons Phoenix is looking at Ayton as being a logical move, because it's not that big a move for him geographically, so he'll settle in so quickly. So, and like for Ayton, I'm sure his preference would be Phoenix, and not just because they got the first overall. Like, if he's choosing you guys and Phoenix, because of that comfort factor, there's a huge upside with Phoenix for him, even though he'd obviously get reps and minutes heavy early with Zacto. With Luka, it's a case of, so long as I can get a cup of coffee, whatever, I'll be happy out. So he'll be grand.
So the answer to how do you follow all these players, it's easy. Subscribe to the Cowbell Kingdom YouTube channel, and we'll have your back all day long, every day. But
superb.
But going back to Luka Doncic, what do you think his ceiling is? Who do you compare him the most to in the NBA? Or are there multiple players that you think he compares to? And how many points, rebounds, and assists do you think he'll average in the NBA his rookie season?
Oh, they're all actually really tough, because I was even being asked over tweets who I'd compare him to in the NBA right now. And like there are definitely elements of Harden, but not all of them. There are elements of Bogey, but not all of them. So like it's definitely a combination of players. Like I think somebody mentioned Joe as well. I think if you could somehow sort of get certain parts of Joe, certain parts of Harden, some parts of Bogey together, you're loosely getting Luka Doncic. And I'm not saying he's got all their best tools. But I'm saying like there'd be elements of all three of those guys who would all definitely fit into the sort of the Luka Doncic makeup. In terms of sort of the ceiling, for me, the ceiling I'm saying is like he's easily got the talent to be a perennial all-star. I mean, any of the guys who played with him, like Jeff Taylor, who logged a couple of years in the NBA, was saying that. So was Trey Tompkins. Trey Tompkins was quite simple, saying, that kid, we're not going to see anyone like him for a long time. And like Trey's, played at a good level as well. Like, all the Americans who played alongside him, Anthony Randolph as well, are all there. This kid could be one of the best we've ever seen. Like, he could easily have a Dirk level career in terms of success, and I know that's a huge, big thing to say. Is that he could easily not as well, but I'm saying his ceiling is comically high. His floor I don't think is that low either, but like I think his floor is pretty high too. Like I don't think he'll fall off too much. But yeah, no, I think in a couple of seasons he could easily be a perennial all-star. He should definitely be in the running for Rookie of the Year if he stays healthy next season. And that for me, it's like he's a pretty straightforward. Like he should be a success. It depends. As for averages, totally depends on where he lands. Is the short version. Like he could easily be like a 10-5-5 guy or a 12-5-5 guy in his first season. But if he's somewhere where he doesn't get minutes, that'll change radically. But if he gets good minutes, I could easily see him being a 12-5-5 guy.
So if he does land with the Kings, do you see him being Rookie of the Year?
Oh yeah. If the Kings would definitely be a good spot for him to try and do it. Like I think like. It's like, because we've had so many injuries in Europe and the NBA this year. You guys have had your good players getting injured issues. We've had, we can empathize, for seeing all the guys we like going down is not fun. And, but assuming he stays healthy, and to be honest, he's been very good at staying healthy throughout his 3 years as a pro, which for a kid is actually also quite good. It's like, if he stays healthy, I would be surprised if he wasn't in the Rookie of the Year contention.
Do you think he needs to get in better shape, or is he fine the way he is?
In terms of actual fitness, I think he's great. He's definitely quite fit, looks after himself. Like, again, I know explosiveness is the question, but I think what you guys do in the NBA is different to what we do over here. And I think 1 year of getting used to the NBA approach to things, he'll be in the ideal shape. Like his sophomore year, even though I'm excited for his rookie year, his sophomore year, I'm really excited for.
I am also excited, and there are a lot of people that say he is the Prince of Sacramento, and it's destined. It's destined. People are using the hashtag the prophecy here in Sacramento. So definitely there are a lot of Luka believers, man.
Yeah, well, like I can see why as well, like because it's again you got to think about the level of competition he's faced. Because no disrespect to to DeAndre Ayton, to Bagley or anyone else, bottom line is for 3 years he's been playing in the second best competition to the NBA in the world on a team that's regularly been the best or second best team in that. And it's also the style of basketball, frankly, as well, as far similar to the NBA than college. Like college basketball, especially this year, I found frankly unwatchable at times. It's so much slower than the NBA. Like I kind of go, how do people compare, see the NBA as the NCAA possibly as a better route to the pros than Europe, because we play, a very much faster style because you got the 24 clock. It is sometimes that simple, and like also you're playing against grown men as well. Like, so, if you're an 18-year-old, 19-year-old getting reps against guys who, some of whom are 3 or 4 or 5 year NBA veterans, really top tier pros, but also like fully developed men. Like these aren't like, teenagers. Like, of course you're going to develop better, like, in that level of a league, and it's not like China where there's, all the bizarre rules over imports and frankly no defense, although it is getting better admittedly in that front. We're playing a game where you've got to be able to play every aspect of it. You've got to be able to defend, and you've got to be able to contribute. And again, where we do go deep on our rosters. Like I was saying, Real used all 12 guys, no one for less than 9 minutes in the final. Luka logged the heaviest minutes. It's a 40-minute game over here for those who don't realize. He logged 28 and a bit, and like that's just a lot of the trust his coach, Pablo Lasso, has on him, in that, like, he was putting him in there for as long as he could, because it's a case of this is the guy we win or lose with.
So Eric James on the text line is saying, does Luka have a good work ethic? Like, is he a gym rat, a leader on and off the court, or is he just like just an average guy who's super skilled, just gets his work done and goes home?
Oh, his work ethic is tremendous. Like you can see that even from like the way Felipe Reyes, he's 36, Felipe, maybe even 37. He might actually be my age. Felipe is this legend at Real Madrid. He's been there since the mid 2000s. Pat Burke, who played for the Suns for a couple of years, he was a veteran when Felipe was a kid there. I was talking to Pat a couple of months ago about this. And like Felipe, so is Mr. Madrid. Like he is the spirit, he is the soul, he's the heart of that team, and he looks to the kid for inspiration. It's like because like afterwards, like Felipe was coming in with the hand around him, like over his shoulder, because all the guys, you got all these like seriously tenured dudes who spent a lot of time, been to a lot of the Final Fours, some guys who played at a high level in the NBA like Randolph, and they're looking to him for leadership, which to me says all you need to know. Like guys who are like 28 plus, like 30 plus, like even older, are looking to this like teenager, to be their boss. So yeah, no, they all generally massive, like, because they don't see him as like some sort of, kid who's just got it all coming to him easy. They know he's putting the work, and they know he'll do the work as well.
So before I let you go, who do you have going to the finals and winning the NBA championship?
I'm awfully boring. I'm going to say the Warriors winning it. So they're from the West, and I'd like to say the Celtics, but betting against LeBron sounds stupid, so I'll say the Cavs. But the Warriors in a sweep, though. I don't think LeBron has anything left in him after this series. No matter who's in the finals.
Right. Which is why I believe the Celtics will win in Game 7 and give the Warriors a little bit of a more complicated series. The Warriors ultimately, the end result will be the same. They'll still be champions.
Yeah.
But I think the Celtics have enough bodies, enough wings to really throw at Kevin Durant and them boys. But where can people find your work, brother? I'm so happy you decided to join the show. You're so insightful, man. I love it.
And I'm so awake as well. Like I got up at like 1:45 Irish time because of the whole translating everything in terms of moving back home. Best place to find what I do is ballineurope.com, and we have lots of Doncic stuff up there, unsurprisingly, given the time of year and all that. Also, our YouTube channel is pretty good as well. It's also just Ball in Europe on YouTube, and on Twitter it's BIE_basketball.
Well, there it is, guys. People are saying trust the prophecy. People are ecstatic to hear all these awesome remarks about Luka Doncic, his work ethic, his overall skill. I appreciate you coming on, brother. Do you want to add anything else before we end the show?
I'm hoping to stay up for the draft for once, although I'm not sure yet. But fingers crossed I'll actually be awake for a draft, and it's only because of Luka Doncic. Other than that, thanks very much for having me on, guys, and have a good afternoon in Sacto.
All right, my man. Thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on. And remember, guys, don't forget to slap that like button and hit that subscribe button as well. Thank you guys so much, and I'll see you guys on the next video.